July 15, 2016 is looking like it might be a day of reckoning in the United States. The Black Lives Matter movement is planning mass protests, and it appears they will be holding protests in almost every major city. They are calling for a collective day of rage. If you're located in one of the major metropolitan centers in the United States, such as Phoenix, Tampa, DC, New York, Minneapolis, Philadelphia, be forewarned. The hacker group Anonymous has also issued a warning. With what recently happened in Dallas, Texas, this can only end badly. And why is this day of reckoning happening? Right now, many people are pushing a narrative that the system is inherently racist, that all cops are racist, and that all cops are killing black men in the streets. But let us examine the facts. Philando Castile was pulled over on July 6, not for having a broken taillight, but rather he matched the description of a suspect that recently committed armed robbery. Also, the car that fled the scene matched his car, as well as the license plate on the car. He was pulled over by Officer Yanez, a Mexican-American police officer. How can anyone say that this is an example of a white cop being racist, when the cop who ultimately shot him was Mexican descent? Yes, this event was tragic, but it will be sent through the investigative process in the internal affairs reviews. And if the officer was wrong, he will be prosecuted. Anton Sterling had recently threatened a homeless person with a gun outside of the convenience store. This is the reason why the police were called out. And upon arriving on the scene, the officers ordered him to get on the ground. He refused. The officers then tased him, and he continued to resist the officers. A physical altercation took place in which the police thought he was reaching for his firearm. Think about this for a moment. If you were approached and ordered by the police to get on the ground and did not comply, then they tasered you. Do you honestly believe it is a good idea to continue resisting them? The truth is, Anton was a felon in the possession of a firearm, which in and of itself is another felony. He did not want to go back to jail. Unfortunately, that ended up costing him his life. Walter Scott tried to grab an officer's stun gun. He then ran away from the police and was shot in the back. But wait, there is more. The officer in question is being charged with murder, and the trial is to start on the 31st of October this year. This is not a wrongful death trial. This is a murder trial. From the evidence in the public arena, it appears that the officer will be found guilty. Michael Brown did not have his hands up. He was assaulting the police officer while reaching for his weapon. The innocence of the officer has been established, and the narrative of hands up, don't shoot has been proven false, but it is still used. And who proved this narrative false? The Justice Department under Eric Holder. Freddie Gray was arrested on the 12th of April 2015 and was transported back to the Baltimore Police Department for processing. While in transport, he fell into a coma and later died on April 19th of the same year. 6 officers in charge of his custody were charged with his death, 3 of which were black. As of July 15th, 5 of the officers have been exonerated and sued the city of Baltimore for their false charges. And it is looking as though the 6th officer will be found not guilty. Tamir Rice was pointing a replica gun that had the orange tip removed at pedestrians in a park. He then pointed that same replica gun at the police. The police had no good way of knowing this gun was a replica. Is it a tragedy? Yes. But what choice did the officers have? Mario Woods was a known gang member who had a knife on him. Shortly after, the police were called out to a stabbing. After they tried to use pepper spray and a beanbag gun, he started to approach the police with the knife still in hand. The closing distance for an attacker with a knife is 21 feet. An attacker can close that distance and injure or possibly kill a victim before the victim can draw, aim, and fire a weapon. This is the standard used for police and trained military professionals. These are the people who Black Lives Matter is using to push their agenda that all cops are racist. Let us look at the stats for a moment. In 2015, police killed 1,146 people, of which 518 were white and 306 were black. That means of the total number of people killed by police in 2015, 45% were white and 26% were black. So who exactly is being killed by police more? Can you name one of the 518 white people that were killed by the police? Can you name one of the 103 unarmed white people? My guess would be no. And my guess would be that neither could Black Lives Matter. So what does all this mean? As a population, we're being fed a narrative that is just plain false and misleading. The systems we have are not inherently racist. Blacks are not being gunned down in the streets by officers. Officers are not inherently racist or criminals. When you examine the FBI statistics, the most people who kill black people are black people, not officers and not whites. So why are we being force-fed this narrative? It is designed to keep us divided and distracted. We have created a class of people that are perpetual victims, not of their own choices, but rather the world they live in. Is this true? Can black people not rise to the levels that whites can? Are there some invisible barriers keeping them down? No. One must just simply look at our current president, Barack Obama, the leader of the free world, who happens to be black. So if it's not the system, what is it? Could it be a disintegration of the black family? Perhaps the glorification of gangs and thug culture? Or perhaps could it be that there's a group of people that wants a victim class to pit against an imaginary foe to constantly keep them in power? John Adams once said, "The happiness of a society is the end of government." The people pushing this false narrative need us to believe it, or they will lose their power. I'm hoping that we can rise above this on July 15th, and it's not a day of rage, but rather a day of awakening to the truth, to the facts. But we shall see.